After what feels like almost an eternity, we're finally getting UFC 309 and Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic. Stipe Miocic, the most title defenses at heavyweight and one of the longest knockout streaks of all time, and Jon Jones, one of the most well-rounded fighters of all time, and also someone who's beat maybe more UFC champions than anyone else. Obviously though, both guys are coming towards the end of their careers, but it should still be a fantastic fight. Today we're going to break down Jon Jones at heavyweight, Stipe's boxing, Jones's systems of attack, and any X factors between the two guys and how they might find the path to victory. So first things first, we're going to start with Jon Jones and his last performance, the last fight we saw against Ciryl Gane. Now, it's not a very long fight, so you wouldn't think there's much to take away, but there's still a few things that we can look at here and talk about. First of all, Jon opens up with a lot of these outside leg attacks. Obviously, southpaw v orthodox, Jon will switch stance, but he definitely likes to use those leg attacks, especially when this lead leg is out here and you just drop that lead leg around the outside. When Gane tried to come back with his own attacks and fight Jon at this kicking range, this distance, Jon was also very good at immediately setting up counters for these. As the kick comes in, instead of lifting his leg up to check the kick and just block, Jon steps across to create space across. So he blocks the kick at the same time as moving himself close enough to grab it with the backhand and then shoot this straight down the middle. And this long straight whilst knee tapping or grabbing a lead leg is something Jon does a lot, and we're going to see a few times. So steps across to block the kick to give space and a line for this straight right off the back. Lovely job. Same thing happens here again, grabs the outside leg, and I always notice this from Kyoji Horiguchi versus Sergio Pettis. You'll see it all the time. Horiguchi just kept darting forward, throwing the backhand, and if it doesn't land as a punch, it's a frame to then attack the takedown with the lead arm as well. So if Jon's going for the takedown or the backhand, it all happens at the same time. So dual threat, and that's from quite a big distance as well. When he had Gane against the cage here, Jon uses this high elbow to block. And there's a lot of strategies around this, but watch how he cuts the cage off from someone like Ciryl. When we look at Stipe, yes, he's a boxer, but he's also quite light on his feet and he moves very well, especially laterally. That's what helped him out in the Ngannou fight. And Gane does this very well as well, so it's a good example to see how good Jon is at cutting off people that can move very well laterally and circle out from these positions. After he blocks this, Jon is going to step with his right foot to the outside and stop Gane from being a circle out to his left. So now he has to go back in a straight line and he'll come across the left-hand side, forcing Gane back the other way and then drifting back to the right. It's just very difficult to kind of position yourself away from Jon Jones because he doesn't move forward, he moves across and covers space when you're trying to exit from different directions. Same thing here as well, and you know, those leg stomps, we didn't see a lot of strikes in this fight, but stuff like those leg stomps is still in the arsenal of Jon Jones. That's what it tells us. He's still going to throw those stomping kicks to the leg, and we're going to take a big look at what that arsenal looks like. But we did still see some of this even in his last performance, so it's not like that area of his game is gone now because he's a heavyweight. And this is a really good thing to note right here as well. So Ciryl Gane, obviously, he's a distance striker, right? One thing we always say about Jon Jones that makes him so good, or one thing that Luke Thomas has always said about Jon Jones, is he can fight at all three ranges. He can fight on the outside with his kicks, he can fight at boxing range, he's got really good head movement, and then in close he can fight with his elbows and his knees. But usually, the boxing range for most people is where Jon can get his elbows and his knees going anyway because he's so long. But this is a good distance that Ciryl Gane's trying to keep. He wants to be on the outside. He certainly doesn't want to grapple. But Jon Jones uses this little moment here to get the one takedown that sort of ends the entire fight. So at distance, Ciryl Gane is going to step forward and kind of do a double jab fake to bring this jab to the body. Now he ends up standing on Jon Jones's foot, right? And we see how people end up standing on people's foots, whether they mean to or whether they don't. But one thing Jon will get from this is a perfect gauge on how close Ciryl Gane is without even being able to like sort of look down. He can feel, oh, he's on my foot. Like if he's standing on my foot, I can get my hands on him. Jon uses this moment to take a big skip forward after when Ciryl fades back, and now we're much, much closer, and Ciryl couldn't exit as far as he needed to. Also, he threw that body shot, so he kind of committed to the inside range anyway. But because Jon's much closer, this time when the attack comes, this is where they were before. This time when the attack comes, Jon's just going to sit right in this tight pocket, wait for the straight, slip to the outside of it, and then immediately be in position to wrap his hands around the body of Ciryl Gane. Perfect management of distance, getting him right into range where he wants to be so he can attack the takedown. And this is the only takedown he needed to win the fight. Once he's got the body lock, drags him one way, then gonna hook and pull him back the other way, and then finally rotate and step around to go in a third direction back across the body. 3 different directional changes from one side to the other until he finally drove and finished the takedown. And once he's on top of you, there's no space here whatsoever, completely clamping down on top of Cyril. Kept this body lock when Cyril was trying to fight these takedowns as well, and he'll actually switch from a body lock position all the way down to attacking the single leg in one fluid motion, and then can pull the hips out and just keep Cyril completely flat on his bum. Stepped over into mount, made it look so easy. And then here, you know, he's trying to attack this guillotine choke, wrapping this left arm. It's not really under the chin, so he lets go with the left, and you'll see the right arm come underneath just to give himself a better angle to lock the hands up, punches his head, pushes it down, and now can wrap that hand right behind the neck. And you'll see on the angle change this time, it's now incredibly tight, so deep under the chin, and it was the tap. So that fight was over really quickly. We didn't see a lot, but what we did see was pretty masterful, right? Some great counters to those kicks from Cyril, threatened the takedown early. As soon as he felt Cyril had closed the distance enough for Jon to be able to walk forward and just set up that body lock, he just did, and then it was kind of the quick finish. So we're going to take a lot of what we've just seen here and then apply it to how Jon Jones used to look, see repetitions of patterns of strategy and how that matches up with Stipe, who we're going to have a look at now. So Stipe Miocic, 5-fight knockout streak at heavyweight whilst he won the title, finishing a ton of people. Is one of those fighters who's just very, very simple in his approach, but what he does well, he does so much better than a lot of people. And he has a lot of physical advantages that he puts behind that. His speed and his power and his timing with his boxing is kind of what got him to this point, where some of his fights aren't very long because he just blitzes people and knocks them out quickly. Or the fights that do go long, he usually uses his wrestling, his ground and pound, and cardio and toughness have always been a big weapon for Stipe. But if we're talking about his boxing and what's effective about it, it's short shots and it's splitting the timing of the opponent. This is Andrei Arlovski really on in the career. Lovely jab right here as well. And not just a jab that he threw from stance, he took his feet with him as he threw the jab to cover the distance and completely caught Andre, like as he was trying to set up his own strike, right on the chin, lovely jab. And then he'll follow up as well with the back right when he can. And another lead hook, doubling up the left-hand side. Same thing here again as well, splits with the jab and just a lovely 2 in close. So little space to land that shot. Like, you know, like this much distance to generate power, but it's enough of a right hand that it takes Andre almost out right here. And another right hand in these close spaces, which is actually the shot that ends it. So it's the timing of the initial shots. It's covering the right amount of distance, because even if he covers too much, he doesn't need a lot of space to generate the knockout blows. But once he hurts you, Stipe is very good at swarming and following you against the fence as well. We're going to see this in a bunch of examples, but if you run along the fence line and Stipe Miocic is chasing you, he will keep tracking and landing shots, and he's very good at that. We're going to pay attention to that because Jon Jones, one of his defensive strategies is to back out, create a frame, and get out along the fence. So here against Werdum, you know, on the back foot, very little space to set up this right hand. But it's kind of a similar thing, you know? He's very confident moving backwards, taking his time, and just looking for the short shot. He doesn't need a lot of space to generate power. And Werdum obviously was making some, I guess you could say, tactical errors in trying to chase Stipe, who again, off the back foot, is just ready to pop. So this left hand here from Werdum attaches to Miocic's right hand, right? And this is Miocic's kill shot, and this is also the hand that's gonna defend against the kill shot. So watch what happens right here, where he kind of guides Werdum's hand away from his body and away from his chin. Once that left hand has come out, Stipe's just kind of controlled and wrapped it down, and it went from being up here to now being down here. And Stipe's got time and space to put his own right hand over the top and find that hole after he's kind of pulled this hand away. Now, granted, Werdum dropped this hand as well because he was trying to throw a shot with it, but it all happens in such a short amount of space, a short amount of time, and it's an incredibly powerful shot that puts his lights out. Short spaces is all Stipe really needs. He is good as well. When he traps people against the fence, he's not afraid to exchange in these situations, and these are kind of maybe the scenarios you would think he'd have an advantage over Jon. We say this about long fighters all the time. You know, the longer your arms are, the longer it takes for your hand to come back to your chin. And for people who've got shorter arms, you know, hook optimal hook distance for power is going to be shorter than someone with a longer arm. So if you're inside that longer arm, then your shots are going to come out quicker and land with more power. So Stipe will get right in front of you where he can let his hands go in quick succession with power that he doesn't need a lot of distance for, and also faster than you if you're the longer guy. Here against JDS, he's flying against the fence, and as JDS is exiting, he keeps up the attack. And for a moment there, you see a southpaw, Stipe Miocic. He never fights southpaw, but if you run out away from him to this side, away from my lead side, then he'll just follow you with the right hand and go southpaw, because he's very good at following people along the fence. And I don't know if that's because he fought a lot of these older heavyweights like JDS and Alistair Overeem, who kind of changed their game to be really elusive and try and stay away. But that's the kind of game he's going to get with Jon Jones, a long guy who's going to try and just break distances with frames and with reaching rather than standing and trying to slip the punches. He's going to be exiting. And Stipe's good at chasing. Even JDS comes back the other way and Stipe's still squared up enough to follow him. So there's a jab, right hand, even gets eye poked here as well. He's going to have to deal with that. Right hand over the top again in this very, very small space. And this is what I mean about being inside the frame right here. Jon, you'll see a lot when he's framing out. This is to keep you, he wants you here. He wants your head here where he can frame. But if your head's here and you're inside this frame like Stipe was, he can still find space to angle and arch those shots over. So here, this is the frame in the eyes. That right hand gets through, but the second time, the frame's gone past his head. His head is inside the frame, and that's all he needs to get this shot. And what do you know? It's the kill shot that ends the fight. Against DC, obviously the first fight, he got caught in the clinch, and we're going to talk about the clinch fighting dynamic in a minute. But something he did really do well in the third fight was start to mix up the elevation and mix up the levels, attacking the body and finishing up high, which you definitely need to do against someone like Jon Jones, because he's so good with his hands and controlling what's going on up here, and then also trunk movement and head movement out of the space. Anytime you attack the body and bring the hands down, or any time you just adjust the elevation, it makes it much, much harder for the defensive sort of options to work and what Jones wants to use. And in this fight against Daniel, he knew the body shot worked from the second fight, but he's using shots to the body to set up his upstairs shots as well. So there's a good shot to the body there. This time level change, underneath a little jab to the body, just pushing DC back, who again is reaching because that's how he likes to fight against these boxers. And there came low and threw the right hand over the top as well while he was reaching. So against Alistair Overeem, you have a very, very elusive heavyweight Overeem who is just literally running away at certain points in this fight. But again, Stipe, very good at tracking down these longer guys and pinning them in the positions that he needs to get his weapons going. Alistair is circling this way, trying to exit. He's going to level change and then come back. And they have a little bit of an exchange and lock up right here, but Stipe is able to turn his body and throw this right hand at the same time. So he's moving this way. As soon as Alistair's going to the right and away from him, he's already throwing the shot and turning his body. So he can then keep moving this way and follow him across the fence, but also throwing the left hook in as well as they swap the positions over the cage. And again, going back to when he engages, he's good at moving forward, taking the feet with him. This long jab gets him inside this frame. Again, it's right on the head, but he's able to power through. And granted, Overeem is kind of covering up a lot in this fight as well. But as he's trying to move laterally, staying on him, calm, patient, staying right in front of him, not overreaching on his shots and getting himself out of position. As Overeem again is just kind of jogging away. And Stipe just moving completely laterally right there. I mean, just moving across Overeem. He's not trying to run towards him, just completely aware of the fact the guy's going this way. I'm going to move like this. Literally throw punches and jump sideways. And again right here, staying on him, big step with the jab, gets him in range. And it just doesn't look complicated, but it's just a 1-2 that's traveled a lot of distance. And there's no defense here from Overeem really, or giving him a reason to stop coming forward. So there we see him fake a body shot and pulls Cormier out to the right-hand side, exactly where he can track along the fence again and just chuck his right hand over and over as DC keeps moving into it. So that's Stipe Miocic. You look at all of his highlights, especially the striking stuff. He gets it done with his boxing. He doesn't need a ton of space, and he knows that. He covers distance well when he moves forward, And eventually the pressure of him moving forward will get you to circle a direction, and he's very good at following you and keeping up the offense, not giving you any space, which is exactly what he doesn't want to give to Jon Jones. But Jon Jones can fight in close as well as at range, so it's going to be hard to see how much that pressure will affect Jon and what he does with it. We're going to take a look at the Glover Teixeira fight. Now, this was a long time ago in Jon's career, not as long ago as some other fights, but there's loads of tactics he used in this one, which you can expect to maybe be similar, because Glover, he's more of a boxer on the feet. He doesn't really have much of a kicking game to offer as a threat, and that's kind of what Jon's going to go up against Stipe. And you can see how Jon just picks apart Glover with the kicking game, but also in close range at boxing as well. So, Jon's hands are high, gauging the space, taking his time, and really trying to pull stuff out of Glover. These are the situations he doesn't want to be in, where he's exchanging in close, but even when these boxing combinations happen, you get these big knees to the body and these big clinch attacks. And then this forced Glover to exit always and reset. As Glover's coming forward, he catches the kick here, and you think, this is Glover Teixeira. This is a takedown right here for Glover. Even tries to turn the angle, but the balance is so good of Jon. And look how tight he grabs this overhook and this underhook, and then the head position pushes him to the fence. Now, I think if you've seen this fight, you're about to know what happens next. And I just want to say, this is right at the start of the fight. We're about a minute 20 in, and Jon is already doing this. And he is so tight and strong with his grips and positions that I assume at heavyweight it's only going to be even worse. But he's completely locked down this position, sticking his head in, everything he needs to do. And then, of course, what does he do to Glover? Rips this arm apart completely, which he was not ready for. So I got to point that out because obviously that happened. This is the frame that I was talking about. Jon Jones will do this with either hand. You'll see it a lot when it's orthodox southpaw, but Jon started doing it against Glover orthodox v orthodox. And he's taken his left hand and literally touching the right of Glover, as if to say, this is your biggest weapon. I'm just going to put my hand on it. And when I've got my hand on it, I can control it. Now watch what happens here with Jon. Glover is going to want to throw this right hand, because why wouldn't he want to throw the right hand? As he's trying to touch and throw it right over the top of this left. Jon picks up this elbow. We've seen him come high on this elbow to try and block these right hands over the top. But Jon Jones here steps through and elbows him on the inside of the arc of this right hand, which is just crazy, right? Like he went from, I'm going to put my arm on your hand, and then as you throw it, I'm going to come on the inside and then throw my elbow. And then I'll go back to just putting my hand on your right hand. And it's like, throw that again. See what happens. I'm just going to come through the middle. It's just stuff you don't see from other fighters. And it causes a lot of problems because you can't initiate offense because everything you're throwing is starting to get countered or sort of, manipulated in a way, like some wizard that's turning your attack into you hurting yourself. Same thing here again, and he starts to use the frame to pop right down the middle with these jabs, not just to get the reaction that he wants off the right hand. If he doesn't get it, slowly, bam, straight down the middle again. And of course, he's got things like these turning side kicks, which are nasty and are still in his arsenal. Oblique kicks here, because Glover's kind of stationary, moving forward, and Jon can just chop away with that back left leg over and over again. This is what we're talking about as well. We saw it in the Garn fight where he'll, knee tap or grab the back of the leg and then throw the backhand. Right here, he's gone all the way down. Coaches always tell you to sell your feints as much as possible. This is a feint. He's sold this. Glover's just going to go, what? He's attacking my legs. I better put my hands down. And this punch is already on the way to his face. And these long, straight punches right down the middle are, very effective from Jon. And we'll see more of that in a minute and how it plays out in the strategy. And of course, when Glover comes back in, he gets a horrible teep kick as well, which Jon does a lot. If you're coming close because you want to box, he'll throw something, it makes you reset the space, and then as you come in, he'll meet you with a kick. In this case, a beautiful stabbing kick to the liver, really. We'll see here, for Stipe, sometimes he does travel in a straight line in situations, especially after resets. And if he wants to walk forward, Jon Jones has that backhand ready to go, and he's got those kicks ready to go. And we saw Stipe walk into the back left southpaw straight that we just saw from Jon at least 3 times in this Overeem fight. This was the first one where he just sort of comes straight back in, bam, straight left, right down the middle, completely takes him off his feet. And here as well, the body kick, which we're going to see, and then the straight left as well, more of a hook that time. But it's down the middle as this space has been created. And Stipe was kind of walking into those back linear shots, so you got to imagine that's also going to be there for Jon. Kick in the leg, frame off the face. I mean, this is kind of just how the story as the fight goes, really, that on the outside, Jon was just attacking the body, attacking the legs, and then when we came inside, he was framing. And, you know, towards the end of this second round, it was kind of like, well, this is the story of the fight. Jon Jones is just going to control distance and beat him up. This is crazy. Like, I know, obviously, in this fight, Jon poked Glover in the eyes so many times, right? And it's not okay. But he's literally framing on the guy's face like this. Framing off his face. The fingers are up above the eyes. And then he pushes off his face to throw an elbow. Like, this is crazy, dude. And it's just like, if you're a boxer and you've got a reach disadvantage and you're trying to punch and the guy's got his hand in his face, but he can also elbow you from there. It's just, how do you train for that? You know, there aren't guys that do that in MMA, really. Nice frame. I like how he throws a jump flying knee and it's like, oh crap, no, it's actually a leg stomp as well. Back to the legs one more time, frame again, stepping elbow from the frame, takes him off balance. He's just literally big bothering him here and putting his hand on his head. And like I said, this is the story of the fight. Double gripping now on the arms. You know, wrist control is something Jon is so good at. And of course, he's going to throw the elbow over the top, literally pulling his arms down so he can't defend himself. And then we come back in this clinch position and Jon, another elbow, and then we see the same thing where he's able to get both wrist control on Glover. This is what I mean about Jon as well. Yeah, he can fight at those three ranges, but when you're at boxing range, Jon doesn't really box. He's throwing elbows at your face and hand trapping so you can't hit him, throwing elbows over the top. I mean, it would just put Glover in a lot of problems. Completely pulls this hand away, but it's actually the left elbow he's going to throw through. And up in this position as well, just walking towards him. The reason we're bringing this up so much is because you're going to see tactics that Daniel Cormier used on Stipe. Right here, he takes his right hand and reaches across the body and grabs the opposite wrist, right? And if you can control the right hand side and pull it away, well, obviously my left is completely open because I've got control of this side of your body. And you'll see that here, reaches across the opposite side. Glover's worrying about this single collar with his other hand here. But Jon is just going to step out and just chop away with another left elbow over the top. So wrist control from Jon. He's so good at stripping positions and then just beating you up. Again, this is where he's holding the back right hand of Glover. So Glover's like, I'm going to try and throw it. The high elbow kind of comes over the top to defend this time. But he can also grab the hand and then attack the legs. You just never know what's going to happen. Again, just pouring it, throw it. No, you're not going to do a thing. Then we'll go back to the legs. Then we'll go back to framing on the head. It just sort of gave Glover no options in this fight. And by the end of it, like I said, Jon's attacking the legs, jump, turning side kick, push, frame with the double hands, controlling this to put the left elbow back in, and then just kind of, you know, ending up in this position where he's controlling both wrists, which is, again, something you rarely ever see, especially against a guy like Glover Teixeira. Like someone who's literally got both of your wrists and they've got full control of your body. That is not a position you want to be in ever in an MMA fight, right? Jon Jones, wrist control, you know, we see it a lot for the takedowns. And we're going to look at some grappling soon as well. But yeah, Jon Jones has a ton of weapons against guys who are only really going to answer him with boxing, right? Because it kind of makes them predictable. He knows what to worry about and he can find ways to set up his own offense even more. Now, this was against Glover Teixeira. We talk about Stipe. Stipe moves quite well. So let's talk about the second Gustafsson fight as well, because it was a great performance from Jon. And then later on in the video, we are going to look at what Alex actually did well in this fight and where he gave Jon problems and what Stipe might be able to do. But to see Jon also use some similar tactics against a guy that moves around a bit more, is better at sort of, you know, keeping the space that he wants. He still had plenty of answers for Alex. And again, we're locking up the lead hand, we're attacking these legs. And then he did a good job, you know, maintaining distance. There's just a good example of him getting out of the way, the body kick, meeting the boxing of Alex as well with short shots and traveling space to land elbows and things like that. You know, that was from boxing range. That wasn't a boxing punch. You know, he's throwing elbows that cover these distances. And then once he's landed that, it's back to attacking the body again to reset these spaces. The main problem that Alex was having as a boxer is every time he tried to close the distance, Jon would come forward and crash with him. Like, it wasn't the only thing Jon would do. But Jon, every time Alex is like, let me get my hands going, like Stipe would, and step forward with his 1-2, Jon could just meet him and just shut it down. Because if you can clinch better than your opponent, Well, you don't have to commit to boxing range if you can just grab them and take that away. So a lot of the times Alex is coming in to do offense and Jon's just meeting him to the body. It's like Alex couldn't even let his hands go because we're clinching, we're kneeing, and then we're getting back out to space where I feel comfortable and we can start this again. Here again, look, he's trying to bounce, come involved, trying to inch his way in, and he's getting met with this straight left that we talked about as well. Has to come back out of range. Trying to work his way in here, gets the left body kick, which is absolutely nasty, that Jon throws so well. There's an even bigger one right there as well. So it's kind of like, you know, if I'm not close enough, I'm getting slammed with kicks to the body and the legs. If I get too close, he can just clinch me or time me on the way in with horrible elbows. It just gave Alex very few options in this fight for what to do. And again, gets met by a kick walking forward. This is a lot closer for Alex. He's going to try and set some things up. Touches the leg for the fake right here. And this is actually the takedown. Jon switches southpaw to give himself an open side. And this time as Alex comes in, he just level changes right through and gets a lovely takedown. And of course, this is kind of how this fight ends because he immediately goes to work with the ground and pound. Now, Alex did do a good job getting off his back, getting to shoulders, which we're going to look at as well because Stipe is good at that. So we can have a little look how that matches up. But it didn't really matter because Jon is so good just framing, crushing, putting all his weight in different spots, staying really tight and heavy, completely just squishing the life out of Alex Gustafsson right here. He could, you know, stay in this position for as long as he wanted. It's again this whole sort of lockdown like we saw earlier in the clinch. He's got this underhook here, which means Alex isn't going anywhere. He's framing on the head. He's driving the hips in so he can just flatten Alex back to the mat with his shoulders. Now, Alex here kind of does a good job, again, getting to his knee, sticks an arm out to try and sit up. But again, you can see the strength of Jon, pulls the knees in and adjusts. Now, let's have a look at some takedown defense from Stipe. So this is DC, obviously, one of the best wrestlers ever in MMA, regardless. Really close on the inside here. The jab shoots past DC, slips the outside. Lovely opportunity to do exactly what we saw Jon Jones do previously and just start attacking takedowns. Wraps the hands behind the leg, lovely work from DC. Stipe knows he's in trouble, and so now we're moving this direction. DC is going to turn him to the left-hand side, turn him back to the right-hand side, and then dump him on the mat. But Stipe immediately elevates and pushes over with the left knee. So he's not gone straight to the mat and given up. He's already moving, and Stipe is very good. As soon as we hit the mat, he's moving his hips, he's getting back up. He's got a good core so he can sit up in positions where he needs to sit up to work for escapes. Rolls him over, obviously DC hits the cage so he can push back across. Tries to chase to get outside the left there as well, but DC is trying to clamp down with his hand over the top versus the underhook, you know. And that's DC clapping him, but even as soon as we hit the mat, this left knee fires up from Stipe and he's rolling back through to try and get to his knees. So he never gives up on these positions and he actually gets through to his knees. The right leg of DC comes right the way over and he's able to stand up. Now he's got to address this, you know, front headlock position, which is always a problem. Any wrestler will try and snap you straight back down, but he's able to. He's able to keep his posture high, fight the hands on the inside here, and eventually strips the grip of DC. Just a little bit of hand fighting, separation, and he can get free from this position. And there we go. Even DC's trying to drive him back down. Not much space, but he's able to get free. So Stipe, you know, we see him get taken down, but we also see he does have good instincts and good, you know, strategies to get himself back to the feet, even if he does get taken down. We did see this in the Ngannou fight though, right? This is a couple of moments into the round. He's already been hit with a big shot. Stipe decides it's time to start wrestling. It's a lovely job again, slipping off the jab, level changing. That right hook almost kills him. The exact same thing DC did. Grabs a single leg, rotates him towards the fence and tries to work for this takedown. Problem is though, this is the last fight we saw Stipe in. I doubt he's going to shoot on Jon Jones because this is what happens when he shoots on Ngannou this time. Ngannou puts his weight on him, turns around, sprawls out perfectly, has the chest wrap, and instead of exiting, rotates to the back and starts blasting Stipe with some big shots. Now with the body lock position, we're going to see this left leg of Francis kick this lead leg out as he rotates with the body lock and drags him to the mat. And then it's just a lot of ground and pound damage that Stipe ends up taking. In fact, Stipe finds himself in this position quite often where he does get hit with a lot of ground and pound because his defenses on the ground aren't to go to my back, get guard, get my jiu-jitsu. It's to get to my knees and try and stand up, which is often where you can take a bunch of punishment. Ngannou, again, he's got this underhook now, so he can stop this second follow-up takedown, and he's gonna run, exit, because if you've got the underhook side, there's no control from this left arm, right? And he can exit from this position. So we see Stipe get taken down, but we also see Stipe get up. And here against DC as well, you know, this I think is good initially. We're going to talk about how this clinch game mattered, but again, left hand, same attack from DC, grabs the back of the leg, hips in from Stipe, and you think he's good right here, doing all the right things, but unfortunately this is DC. As soon as he gets a little bit more space underneath him, there's good balance from Stipe, but yeah, this is Daniel Cormier doing his signature Daniel Cormier high crotch right here. Lifts him all the way up. And yeah, unfortunately for Stipe, he gets taken down again. You know, can Jon Jones do this to Stipe? I don't know. It's more of a testament to how good DC is. But even here, when he gets on his back, you know, he's up immediately. Shoulders are off the mat. He's trying to sit up. Obviously, he's not really going to attack this leg from this position, but he's scrambling straight away to find better spots. Again, on the shoulders, pushing, creating space, not letting DC get position on top of him. But again, this is what I talked about, you know, sometimes because he's so committed to being on his knees and then trying to move up, he's been stuck in positions like this, and like, he gets hit with a lot of shots right here in the first round, trying to attack his own single leg on DC as a means to get himself up. That's the point DC starts looking at Herb Dean in a minute, because he's hitting him over and over and over and over, and he's trying to hide his head right under the legs, but you know, he can't really wait around in these kind of positions against a heavyweight Jon Jones, I feel like, because he's just going to take a hell of a lot of damage. And we saw him take a lot of damage from Ngannou in this position. So this, again, is Jon Jones when he gets on top, right? This is the second Alex fight. This is where he completely dismantles him pretty quickly. We see this crucifix still coming out. He's got the option to attack the submission on the far side. As Alex bridges over, he's going to wrap this arm, put the hand behind the head, and then use this again to wrench the body back down. It's just such positions of tight control from Jon. Wraps the back with the right arm, and now he can start taking the back, gets the hook in, and then just completely destroys him. I mean, this is so fast. Mike Beltran is in there so quick to stop this fight. As soon as Jon has that position, it's kind of apparent that Alex isn't getting up, and Jon is just gonna drop the most devastating ground and pound ever. I mean, like, because of his frame, right, he gets so much height from these shots. Like, you might, if you're a smaller guy, you might be here and you're punching from like here, right? Jon Jones is up here, bringing his arms all the way up and all the way down. And because it travels so much further, obviously it has more speed and it does more damage, right? So it's terrifying to be in this position. And Jon Jones, 100%, I feel like, could put Stipe in a position like this and end the fight from the ground. You know, I think we're going to see some striking, but Jon will shoot takedowns. Stipe has been taken down. He's good at sort of scrambling and getting back up. But if he gets in any kind of these lockdown positions, I think Jon could definitely end the fight here. So I want to talk about the second Daniel Cormier fight, right? The first one between these two, it was kind of, you know, over pretty quick, well set up from DC, fantastic finish. DC obviously wanted to sort of replicate the game plan. So a lot of this fight, DC's going to be grabbing hands. He's going to be controlling, not so much as framing, but hand trapping, I guess you would call it. And this is kind of how he set up. The first knockout really was from an underhook and he broke from the clinch, but it was from this distance. And of course, DC knows that Stipe is not really going to kick him. Stipe has a couple of good leg kicks he'll throw every now and again, a couple of body kicks. He does throw a head kick, but DC's plan was just to walk in front of him, control the most dangerous weapons, and then beat him up at the range that I feel most comfortable, right? I mean, I guess you can kind of tell here a little bit, right, with the reach advantage. DC's more extended, Stipe isn't, so we're more in Daniel Cormier's range. But Daniel starts to beat him up from this position, and who did Daniel learn this from? He learned it from facing Jon Jones, because it's exactly what Jon Jones does to Daniel the first time they fight. He clinches, he hand traps in close, and then he fires elbows and he fires knees. So this is the kind of thing that Jon Jones isn't only going to do, but definitely will look for in this fight come 309. And this is how DC was effective with it, in close as well. Throwing these short shots over the top, even comes back with a back fist right here as well. Hand grabbing, elbow, stepping. I mean, that's Jon Jones. DC's, I'm not saying that no one else is allowed to use it, obviously, but DC's picked that stuff up definitely from fighting Jon Jones, or at least seeing how effective Jon Jones is with those kind of techniques, and he's using them on Stipe. And DC's half the size of Jon Jones. Stipe does throw back in these situations, but another right hand comes through there from DC. Again, we're trying to control hands. That elbow becomes a shot. There's a right hook behind it instead. Grabbing here, 1-2 over the top on the inside. This is after a bit of an eye poke, you got to remember that too. And again, we're grabbing the hands and we're throwing on the inside with a 1-2 and then also chaining into the wrestling afterwards, which is something else Jon Jones can do. Now, that all being said, as effective as that was against Stipe, it's ultimately how Stipe wins this fight. Because, you know, in the 4th round, we know the adjustment Stipe makes, he goes to the body. But the reason the body shot is here is because DC is controlling his hands. And Stipe kind of realizes, oh, we can just tack this body. So as effective as it was against Stipe, it also kind of led to the end of the fight. Because every time Daniel reached, Stipe would just start chopping the liver shot. Boom. More of an extended jab that time, but you can see it, and then you can follow up the rest of the combinations. But you can see it on the finishing shot right here. We're grabbing and boom, big shot to the liver. And again, now the 1-2 again that we've just talked about all night, the 1-2, the follow-up shots, and Stipe gets the job done. So tactically, you can kind of think of that what you want. If we see DC able to frame and then throw elbows, you can 100% believe Jon Jones is going to try and do that. The question is, how easy is that left body shot to land on Jon Jones, who's going to be a bit further away, so you have to travel further. You know, there's a good sequence that I haven't got where Stipe is trying to throw the left body shot against Ngannou, and Ngannou is just blasting him, you know, mid-punch because of it, because he's trying to commit. Obviously, you throw this body shot, your hand is not up here, and he gets tagged with his own shots because of it. So it's an interesting thing to think about. I personally think Jon Jones is going to win the clinch range. I think he'll throw elbows. I think he'll throw knees. I think he will wrestle in those positions when he feels like there is a threat from Stipe. It's just a question of whether Stipe can do what he did in this fight and turn it some way tactically to his advantage. So how about Jon Jones, right? What are some of the ways Stipe might be able to work his boxing game against Jon? We've seen some guys like Glover and Alex have success, so we looked at how those fights didn't go well for them. We're going to look at what they did do, which Stipe might be able to replicate. Again, it's more about getting past this lead hand of Jon a lot of the time, right? At this point, the head is already on the inside, which means Glover's got less range to cover if he comes forward with his punches. So as soon as he found himself inside this reach, he was able to step forward and throw combinations and hooks. There's a lovely left hook there and follows up again, because Jon does tend to do this and cover. He's not really looking to slip and counter like Conor McGregor. He'll cover and get space in these situations. He doesn't plant and then try and trade back, you know. So if you can catch Jon in a situation where I'm inside his reach, chances are there's not a lot of offense is going to come back, you know. Once Jon's decided to start covering, very rarely is he throwing elbows even out of that situation. So if Glover could get past that reach, then we can start throwing in combination. Same thing here as well, slips, he's moved past that reach, now we're on the inside, he can start coming up. Re-angles by Jon, right, because he is so good at this. But this is something he will do, frame and then exit and run out. And these are the kind of shots here that we see Stipe usually land on people when they are framing and trying to move out of position. He's not landing a lot here, but I want to show you what Jon's defensive sort of reaction is to this kind of pressure, and then we'll have a look where sometimes they do land. Like that's Jon getting out of that situation perfectly. Maybe you don't want to chase him because he's so good at that. But again, body shots. I talked earlier about how in the 3rd fight with DC, Stipe was going to the body and then finishing up high. When Glover starts doing a similar thing, coming to the body, not only does it change the elevation, but he's got to the outside of this lead arm again, so now we're inside this frame of Jon, and he can finish up top. So it comes down to the body, lands, and now we're inside, can finish up top with a left hook, just about gets through. Jon gets his arm up, still framing, and he's still inside this frame, so we can keep moving forward here. And Jon gets hit with a right hand over the top of this frame as well. So something else Alex decided to do, he was going to try and win the lead hand battle, right? If this lead hand is so important defensively for Jon, well, Alex is going to try and use it to set up his own offense. So he would pull the lead hand, he'd throw left hooks around it. He was trying to actually dominate this position. Here as well, he uses this to judge distance, to step in with the left hook, and again, touch, and then another left hook. Touch, controlling the lead hand, trying to just find his way in with his left hooks. But he also got Jon in these positions, is what I'm talking about, right? Toe to toe, where we're going to swing, right? Jon doesn't really do this very often, but he forced Jon into these positions where he didn't have anywhere else to go against the cage. And because of Alex's hand speed, he was able to, you know, throw a few more shots in these situations, gets inside of that left hook, and comes over the top with his own right hand as well. Just putting Jon in a position he doesn't really want to be in and making him fight from there. DC was coming forward with this pressure again, trying to force this inside range, but Stipe is someone who will plant and throw off the back foot. And we've seen that, right? We've seen him get knockouts off the back foot. So if Jon is going to be constantly moving forward, swarming and trying to actually control to get to that space, you've got to be careful because Stipe throws really hard. Big uppercut that gets through, and then he's going to throw the right hand over the top as well. Frame of his own to right hand over the top. So you can't just force yourself on Stipe all the time because he has power and he will throw shots when he's under pressure as well. All right, well, there's the breakdown. We kind of went all over the place. Like I said, there's no real definitive one way I think either guy can win or lose. I think we just take a look at a lot of strategies that both guys have used, both guys have had used against them, and it's up to you to decide how you think it's going to play out. I think Jon Jones is probably going to take it. You know, he is a big favorite. I don't think that's crazy to say. That's just my opinion if you want it. I think Jon at range is going to be able to control things when it gets close to boxing range. I think we'll see some clinch work from Jon. And I wouldn't be surprised if Jon Jones gets a takedown and he might end it in the first round again if he gets a dominant position. Stipe, though, you know, he's consistently been a very tough individual, great cardio, will always be in there to fight for the distance, you know. Realistically, you know, if a fight goes long, who knows how it's going to start looking? You know, DC tried to beat Stipe like that twice, and both times Stipe was able to win the war of grinding, right? That's how Jon Jones beat DC back in the day. You know, they had the whole break bones t-shirt. He wanted to outgrind DC. So we see Jon also in those situations thrive as well. Stipe seems to only really have one path to victory, right? Get the boxing going, land some big shots with the hands. Jon, it seems like he's got a lot more options. But you guys let me know how it's going to play out. Stipe is obviously a veteran, and a lot of you guys believe in him. But that is what the comment box is for. I hope you've enjoyed this breakdown, giving you a bit more insight into both guys and maybe, you know, some fun things that might happen in the fight. Jesus. So give us a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe as well, guys. This might be the last breakdown that we do. It might actually be the very last one, which would be sad. We can maybe find another way to do it, but well done, TV and Cage. You have been fantastic. Maybe you'll see it again. If you want to see it continue, you better show up and support right now, otherwise it probably won't. But enjoy 309 and have a good time, guys. It should be a banging fight between two legends.